My next book was The Appeal by Janice Hallett. It was a digital book. And I picked it because it's a closed door mystery. So that means you see all the, all the characters. One of them is the killer. And I wanted to solve this mystery myself before they did. Well, I could say I didn't solve it, but a lot of the storyline and why things happened, I did guess ahead of time. It's okay, I have to read while I say this word. Epistolary, which means it's all like text messages, letters, emails, essays, things like that, which I'm fine with. I can do without the character growth or the characterization of people. You still get a lot of kind of what the characters are like and their feel for them. It's written from the perspective of two lawyers getting ready for trial, and they're going through all the paperwork, trying to figure out who did this and why. It's a sick child in her family. The family is involved in like a local theater community production kind of thing. And the people in this theater community are raising money for their sick grandchild, and a murder happens in amongst that. So it was, you really had to like think. So I really enjoyed it and I had a lot of fun with it, but I only gave it 3 stars.
Okay. Still sounds like you had fun though.
Yeah.
The next book I read was God Killer. I forgot who it's by, unfortunately. It was a story that it was really interesting because it has a lot of things that I like in it, of like going back to the lightning thief, like there are gods involved. And there's this kind of quest of these 3 people together who are an unlikely trio. Like they don't necessarily start off liking each other. They don't necessarily want to be together, but they need to pull together to get their different things that they need out of this quest done. So I found that really interesting. Thought there was a lot of character development and growth. Sometimes that I do get annoyed when I can tell from the writing and like from like the 3rd act and like the ending that they're setting the book up to be a series, which is fine, fair. I'll read the 2nd book. You already got me, but I kind of appreciate series more when each book can really stand on its own legs. So that part did kind of irk me a little bit, but I thought it was really nostalgic, and I listened to it on audiobook, and it takes place in Scotland, and it very much has to deal with like old Scotland, kind of like folklore and magic and gods. And the narrator was Scottish, and so just reading it was a very fun experience. I felt transported reading it. It was very good, but I did get a little annoyed with when you can just really tell that they're setting this book up and scaffolding so many things, and I'm like, yeah, I appreciate that, but like let's focus on these 3 people.
Yeah. What would you rate it
Mm,
as?
I would rate it like 3.5, 3.75.
Oh,
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I don't know if I had, just because I've just read about gods, that it was great, but it also didn't like sweep me off my feet.
yeah.
But I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it. I thought it was really good ambiance for like September, of like this old Scottish folklore, and it was very cozy in that sense too.
Okay. My last book for September was an audio of The Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it was narrated by Cindy Kay. She was fantastic. It was a bizarre combination of stories and characters. It was a bit sci-fi. There's a violin playing homeless trans woman who is taken in by this diva violin teacher who has to collect 7 souls for the devil. And then there's also these aliens who look human and own a donut shop and make donuts. I'm still not sure exactly what I think, and I'm not exactly sure what I think of the ending, but I give it 3.5 3.75 stars, and they were quirky characters, which I always love. There is character growth and introspection. It was a fun book.
I will say there is something to be said about a book that you don't know what to think about. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's still an accomplishment on the author's part, even if you end up later down the line deciding I actually didn't really like it or whatever, if you rate it lower in the future. But a book that keeps you, I don't really know what to make of this, is still something incredible, because at least you're still thinking about it and it's still like present.
It was like I wasn't sure. It was like two different stories, kind of, but yet it did intermingle. And when it started really intermingling and getting good, it was towards the end, but it was satisfying.
The next book I read is actually a novella by Becky Chambers. It's called To Be Taught If Fortunate. Have you read it?
No, I have not.
Okay, I think you'd really like it, but it is from one person's point of view, and it's written almost like a letter. And they go on this journey throughout space, and their mission is to go to 4 different planets that we have data that life is present on. And this is set in the future. And they're writing it as a letter to go back home, because they know that their communications will not be simultaneous. Like, it's they know that the letter won't get there for another like 20 years, because they're very far
Okay.
out. I freaking loved it. It felt more like speculative fiction instead of science fiction, because it felt very
Okay.
realistic of what is going on in the world, because they do talk about some of the things that are happening on Earth, and some things that are predicted to happen, like climate change. How does it affect their mission? I really enjoyed it, and I also thought that the science was very interesting and exciting.
Huh.
I learned a lot actually about Earth, because it does kind of compare things back to Earth.
Okay,
Um,
that makes
so
sense.
you actually learn a decent amount of science through it, but not in a boring way. And I found it really exciting, because the character is really excited about it, and people who dedicate their lives to being astronauts, they have to love it, because you're out in space with 3 other people. Yeah, I thought it was really beautiful, and it had a lot of great commentary on ethics. We're doing this mission for OCA, their fictional NASA.
Yeah.
But who do we owe this to? And is it right to make those decisions about them, about their mission plan? Because something happens about 70% of the way through that is just throws the book a little bit, throws the novella a little bit.
Ooh.
And then they really have to grapple with decisions. That's all I will say, because I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed this. It was a very quick read.
It sounds great.
Does not fail me ever, Becky Chambers.
Yeah.
I have yet to read one of her pieces of writing. I've only read 4 now. I think The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet,
Yep.
Song for the Wild Built, Prayer for the Crown Shine Out, To Be Taught If Fortunate, and
Yep.
every single one I've absolutely loved.
Yeah.
And this one
Yeah.
did get a little bit darker than all the ones.
I really need to catch up. I think there's too many books I want to read.
Okay, but if you had to pick out of all the ones that I talked about, one that you would be interested in reading.
That's hard, because there were 3 of them that I'm very. You're obviously Becky Chambers is probably going to be the first one that I will read before the other 2, but the 7 Moons, that sounds interesting. That sounds really fascinating, and also the Killing God Killer. That sounded interesting, even though it wasn't rated as high. It was just kind of thought-provoking.
You're being a little hard on it.
Interesting.
I think you would really like it.
So now I have 3 books I have to add to my TBR.
I really liked the book that oh my goodness, it was the last one that you talked about.
A Light from Uncommon
A
Stars.
Light from Uncommon Stars. That sounds very interesting, and I like all those concepts together. It sounds kind of chaotic, but in a good
Yes.
way.
Yes.
And I like stories that bring in kind of those supernatural, magical elements to kind of illustrate bigger things
Yeah.
at work. Because even with like fantasy and sci-fi, like with To Be Taught If Fortunate, like of course I'm not an astronaut in the future,
Yeah.
but everyone knows the feelings of like isolation and loneliness from all the crazy things that are coming out in the news, and then we kind of are faced with like, what do I do now with this information, right?
Yeah.
That's a very human experience, and I find that fantasy and sci-fi sometimes do it better
Yes,
with
yeah,
those very, very human stories, because they use those things as like vehicles and symbolism and
yeah,
metaphors for everything going on.
yeah.
So
Parts of that book were a little difficult just because, it broke my heart with the trans character. I just, I wanted to give her a hug. I wanted to take care of her. It's like nobody should go through what
yeah,
she had gone through. Um, but I'll let you find that out yourself.
yeah. What was your favorite book from all the ones that you read?
I would say The Light from Uncommon Stars. So
I think this one's a toss-up between To Be Taught Fortunate and Seven Moons.
yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with Seven Moons though, because I just felt like it was so creatively done. I can't remember the last time I read a book that was like this. I feel like it's very original. Um, and there's so many elements that keep you going throughout the whole book. Like the murder mystery is obviously a huge part of it,
Yeah.
but you need to see how it ends and how the character develops and how things pan out, because they don't pan out how you think they do.
Oh, interesting.
So I found it really, really exciting.
Well, I'm writing those and putting them to my TBR.
Yes. What are you reading currently?
Currently, I am reading, um, I forget the name. Well, one of them I'm listening to is The Historian, which is a good October book because I'm just looking at my phone to see what the other book is. But it's about Dracula and set in Europe, and it's all moody and talk about vampires, but it's a really thick one, so it's gonna take me a while to get through. I'm enjoying it. It's kind of fun. I I think right now a little heavy-handed, but we'll see. And they can follow us on Instagram if they want to know more. And the other one is Remarkably Bright Creatures, and I'm loving that. It's
Yeah,
got some people in it, but it's got an octopus, and I love octopi.
that's been on my TBR for a while. I'm now that we're about to be in October, I'm fully leaning into my spooky
Yeah,
fantasy TBR.
yeah.
Everything I've been putting off until October to really just feel the nostalgia and the ambiance to it. So now I'm fully leaning into it. Right now, I'm just about to start Mexican Gothic.
Oh, okay.
So
I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that one because I read that one and I just, you know, want to see what you think of it.
yeah. Well, our followers can find out in our next reading wrap up when
Wrap
I
up.
have finished it for October. So that one will be coming out at the end of October.
Okay.
But for our next video, you can also find out our book of the month and follow and watch that video to see our thoughts on that. We read the same book for that month and get together and talk about our thoughts on it.
Yep. And follow us on Instagram. You'll see book updates, reading updates, maybe glimpses of our animals, and friends and family, as they read as well.
Well, thank you for joining us and sharing our collected stories. And you can follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and happy reading.